Thank you all for joining the Gwinnett NAACP for our next edition of Meet the Candidate Forum. This will be our first one where we're covering a primary race. Today we'll be covering the Democratic primary race for House District 106. So if you live in Snellville, that'll be pretty much mostly your district. But before we jump into the program, let me just cover a few things. Again, I'm your host, Edward Paul, Gwinnett NAACP First Vice President, along with me, our other co-host, President Poole. Just a few maintenance things to cover. Early voting does begin May 2nd from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Please go to www.mvp.ga.gov to check your voter registration status, to check your polling locations, also to check what races that will be on the ballot. Please remember this is a judicial election as well, this May election. So any judicial races as far as judges, those races will not be on the ballot in November. That it's only going to be on the ballot in May. So whoever you vote for, that person will represent you as state judge or state Supreme Court or whatever judicial position it is. That's who will represent you. Of course, we have Board of Election races, District 4 and District 2, which includes, Snellville for District 4 and Liburn, parts of Grayson, District 2, which is Lawrenceville, and among a couple other cities that's part of that cluster. So, like I said, go to that www.mvp.sos.ga.gov website to check, what all races and things that'll be on the ballot. And of course, quite naturally, we have primary races. This is the time of year where you do elect the candidate to represent you or that you want to represent you either in the Democratic or the Republican Party. Again, we'll have two of the candidates on for House District 106 in the Democratic Party that'll be running for that state House representative position. We do have a voter registration drive coming up next Wednesday, April 13th. So if you have anybody that needs to be registered to vote, that you want to get signed up in your household, please bring them out to the Boys and Girls Club at Norcross on April the 13th at 4 p.m. If you got any teenagers that's 17 that will be turning 18 between now and May 24th, they are eligible to register to vote and eligible to vote in this year's May election. So again, that's at the Boys and Girls Club in Norcross at 4 on next Wednesday, or this Wednesday, shall I say, since it's Sunday, this coming Wednesday, April 13th at 4 p.m. And I'll go ahead and open us up with a prayer, and then we'll take a few words from President Poole, and then we'll begin our program. Dear Lord, we thank you for bringing us here tonight. As always, we ask for blessings and coverings over our friends and family. We ask you to protect us, keep us, watch over us, and as always, give us the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding we need to do what's best for our people. And these things we ask in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, and we'll take a few words from President Poole, and then we'll bring our guests. Come off mute, Ms. Poole.
Good evening to our beloved community. It is just a pleasure to be out here today to welcome our guests, Representative Shelly Hutchinson, and our Representative Dr. Rebecca Mitchell. We have a lot of questions for them, ready to hear. I wanted to emphasize the elections that are coming up on May 24th. That is the Board of Education election, as well as the judicial elections, which will occur on May 24th. So look for those coming up in your area. Now, at this time, we would like to introduce our guests. And if you would turn on their mic.
All right,
if you would turn on their mic, we would like to them to introduce themselves. And we will be asking that during this period, excuse me, that our house rules are that we will all be cordial. We will all be respectful. Of course, I know these candidates will be, as well as our audience. We want to make sure that that this is a safe space for everyone. We would also like to make sure that and announce that we are a nonpartisan organization here for our community, and we're looking forward to what our community has to say through the ballot box. So we ask that these first series of questions, we're going to give you 3 minutes, and we will be timing you. We specifically have small audiences so that we can hear directly from you and get a chance to get your overview so that our citizens can always make the best choices. Good evening. Good evening. Let's start with you, State Representative Shelly Hutchinson. Please introduce yourself to the beloved community here in Gwinnett.
Thank you, President Penny. I am Shelly Hutchinson, and I am originally from New Orleans. I moved here after I finished my undergraduate degree at LSU. So I've been here since 1993. I've been in Gwinnett since 1993. I met my husband when I moved to Gwinnett. Interesting story. We met because we moved into the same apartment complex in Norcross. So the love spark started there, and here we are 25 years later, actually 27 years later, because we dated for 2 years before we got married. So 27 years later, we are in House District 106. We've raised 2 children through Gwinnett County. I opened a business in Lawrenceville. My first job out of college was with DFACS. I worked for Fulton County DFACS for 7 years. They offered a grant to go back to school, so I got my master's degree at UGA in the School of Social Work. So I have a master's degree in social work. I went on to get my full clinical license, and I started a mental health business in 2002. So this year is our 20th year in business. I have roughly 60 or 70 employees at any time, and somewhere around 1,000 open mental health cases at one time. We work our coverage area is from Lawrenceville to Northeast Georgia. So we have from Lawrenceville to Athens, Banks County, White County, Stevens County. We work in a lot of rural areas. I'm really, really proud of my team. We do a lot of great work there. We did a summer program in Barrow County schools, and the participants did so well that they asked us to come back. So I consider that a sign of success. In 2016, I woke up one morning and Donald Trump was president-elect, and I thought, I got to run for office. So the person who was in the seat at the time was there 16 years with no opposition. So I thought, I'm going to give him some opposition since no one else has in the last 16 years, and I won by 18 percentage points. So the lesson is, when you think a situation is just undoable, it's probably doable. It might be if you just try, and I did. So that was such an unlikely series of events that I feel like God has put me on this path. So as long as there are no doors shutting in my face and the doors keep opening, I'm going to keep going through them, because I feel that's what I'm led to do. So that's why I'm here. I have a lot of experience with getting to African-American children through a public school system in Gwinnett County, and that had a lot of ups and downs. And that is a learning experience, to say for sure. And I try through my work as a social worker to help parents in Gwinnett County navigate the same system, in addition to the mental health system, which is going to be a lot more important in the coming years. So that's why I feel like I'm called to be here, and I'm going to continue to do so. I think you're on mute, Mrs. President.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for that. And next, if we have Representative Rebecca Mitchell.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I don't think I've been on a Sunday event before. So most folks know me through this broadcast talking only about COVID. So this is actually a really great opportunity to give folks a little bit more glimpse of the things that I have been doing and a little bit about who I am. So in addition to spending an inordinate amount of time learning about COVID and trying to disseminate that information over the past few years. I am also a veterinarian, but more on the research side or dealing with large animals than dogs, although I get to meet everybody's dog in the district these days. And I also have 4 little kids whom everyone has seen, and I hope do not appear tonight, but I will try my very best. I first ran for office in 2020 and put this seat that had been Republican for a very long time, with the help of lots of people who are listening to this call. And I am really honored that I have had the past 2 years to work for you and to hear what folks need and to help get that done. One of the things that I see us doing at the State House consistently is fighting back against the political disinformation that is coming at us on a daily basis. We have entered into that Trump disinformation era, and we have not left it. So one of the big roles we see ourselves at the State House doing is making sure that we are speaking truth, that we are putting together the coalitions and we're championing the voices that are helping us actually cut through this disinformation, so folks know what bills are actually being discussed and what impact those will have on our communities. And one of the other things that I've really tried to do is make sure that I have engaged here in Snellville to hear what's going on day to day in this district, and make sure that I am doing things like showing up at the Board of Education, because even though I have all these little kids, unless I spend all this time actually listening to what's going on and understanding the impact of our policy decisions, I am not leading from the strongest position. So I really spend a lot of effort doing that. I have been thrilled to be your legislator for the past 2 years, and I'm hoping that you value the work that I've done and will be willing to send me back to fight for you again at the Capitol. And thank you for this opportunity to speak to everyone.
You're very welcome. Thank you both for introducing yourselves. At this point, just a little update. Both of these representatives are incumbents, but they are squaring off against each other tonight because of the 2020 census and the redrawing of their districts. They used to be in separate districts, but their district was combined. So that we want to make sure that there is no confusion on this situation. And at this point, we're just going to start out with something really easy, because we like to do this up front, not on the end, because this will build up as to why you're here. So just briefly, I'm going to start my time at this time. And I'm going to start with you, Representative Mitchell. Please, please, please let the people of Gwinnett know why. Why are you the best candidate for this position?
All right. Well, I don't think we're starting with the easiest one. But I think what I try to bring to the Capitol is fight. And I think not confrontational fight every minute, but force, so that we know that this district has a voice that is really pushing every minute to make sure that we get heard. And I have tried to do that in a variety of ways over the past 2 years, whether that has been in areas where I had subject matter expertise, actually going to folks and continuing to push and push and push to get edits to bills that make them better for us, or whether that has been working with coalitions to make sure that I am hearing what people need and then getting the info out to amplify it, so we can push back against things like when they came for our school board and when they come for our county commission. And we don't win every fight, but we've got to fight it with everything we're worth. And that, I think, is one of the strengths that I really bring to this position. I think being a public health expert in the time of COVID has been really useful, but it will continue to be useful in the future, because we really need the skill set. A huge number of the bills that impact our communities here in Gwinnett actually do have a public health or healthcare lens and have a real impact here. And sometimes they're simple things like whether we can appoint caregivers for folks who are leaving the hospital. And sometimes they're more complicated things like how we continue the pressure to get Medicaid expansion to happen. But I think I bring a real passion for getting things done that I hope to continue to use for the betterment of government to serve this district. And I appreciate the opportunity to answer the question.
Thank you for that. Representative Hutchinson, if you would please answer that same question. Why are you the best candidate to represent State House District 106?
Thank you, President Penny. I will say, we talked about how this is a redistricting year, and it sucks that we have been drawn into the same district. Rebecca is a very decorated scientist. She's a veterinarian. I'm sure her IQ is much higher than mine. I am a humble servant. I'm here because I am the people. I have children to raise, a business to run, and I think I have that in common with everyone. I'm a good neighbor. For the last 20 years, my business does we do in-home mental health. So for the last 20 years, including the years that I was with DFACS, I do services in the home. So I really got to know families in this community on an intimate level. And I still have friendships through that work that I did. And I feel like I hear everything from the challenges of people with a very low income to the challenges with people with a very high income. People with high incomes still have mental health issues. Money doesn't fix everything. In fact, money often exacerbates problems. So I think that I can spread myself from the lowest income levels and the working class families to when I worked for DFACS, most of my caseload was in Milton. And at that time, Milton was, the land of the rich and famous. So I feel like I have a broad understanding of our community. My business and my family's been my life. And most people who are listening and most people in this community are very similar. Their families are their lives, and that's what we do. Unfortunately, the only thing I can say that I have over Rebecca is time. And that's just how it fell as far as when she ran, as far as I ran. The session is 16-hour days. Let's be honest, it's 16-hour days. I get, the commute from Gwinnett, I leave my house at 9. I don't get home sometimes till midnight. I go to every dinner, every function, everything. But what that has resulted in the 4 years that I've been here is relationships that some people don't even understand. If people know, Health and Human Services is one of the committees I stand on, and Sharon Cooper has been the chair of that committee since, the dawn of time. But we have formed this strange relationship where we kind of bounce things off of each other. We're signing each other's legislation. When I first started at the legislature, I went in as a social worker thinking, I'm going to reach across the aisle. I'm going to make all these relationships, until I realized that reaching across the aisle is not a thing in Georgia. But after 4 years, I have made these relationships across the aisle that I think will take us into the future. And I think
we're at 3 minutes.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do to give you a warning, I apologize for stopping you. I'm going to hold up this to say that you have 30 seconds left.
Okay.
Does that work?
Sorry about that.
No, that's quite all right. So thank you for that extensive answer and your ties to the community. Thank you very much. Our next question, since we're talking about the Democrats are the minority up to this point in the state legislature. And let me say that again, in the state legislature, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about ties. How would you use that position to either stop bad bills from passing or to advance good bills to get pushed through the state legislature. If we can start with you, Representative Hutchinson, and just to remind you, we have our 30-second timer.
Thank you.
Please
And
go ahead.
I'll behave from now on. So I'm going to put this out in the universe, and Stacey is going to be governor next time we're in office. And with Stacey there, we have another arrow in the quiver. We have another, we will have a bargaining chip that we didn't have before. And we will need relationships because we're not going to take the House, the Senate, and the governorship. So those relationships are going to have to be nurtured if they haven't already to get good bills passed. Because for 4 years, we've been fighting bad bills. And that is an awful place to be in. So I want to be advancing good bills. If you look under my website, I have dropped a lot of legislation, and it's not because I thought it was going to move. It's so that the public can look and see where my heart is and where my energy goes. So I think when Stacey's governor, and we have relationships on both sides because we will need those because it won't be a trifecta for us. That is when good bills will get passed. And all the terrible bills that we have passed in the last 4 years, with Stacey at the helm, we will at least have a chance to reverse that. The dean once told me that whatever has been done can be undone, and I'm going to hold him to that. We are going to undo the trans bill, the awful voting rights bill, and with Stacey at the helm, definitely voting rights will be addressed and hopefully reversed. But we will need relationships on both sides of the aisle since we won't have the trifecta. So I feel like I'm going to use the relationships that I've made, these amazing relationships with people that sometimes you have to like hold your breath and talk to. I've done that over the last 4 years, and I can use those relationships to advance the good bills that we have in our caucus. We dropped so many great bills that don't see the light of day, and I'm going to use those relationships to get those across the finish line.
Thank you for that. Okay, and the same question for you, Representative Mitchell. Democrats are the minority up to this point in the state legislature, and we need those relationships. How would you use that position to either stop bad bills from passing or to advance good bills to get pushed through the state legislature?
Sure, that's a great question. So I think I actually break it down into several different parts, right? All strategies should parallel process. So we want to use all the tools we have to get things passed or to get things stopped or to make bad things better. If you know it's going to go through and you can advocate for changes that make things less bad, that can also be a really important win. So we saw, again, referring to what happened specifically in Gwinnett, in the fall, a single Gwinnett senator tried to push through 2 bills, vastly restructuring our Board of Education and our Board of Commission. And the way that those were stopped was advocacy combined with legislative coordination, right? So making sure that we are using all of the effective mechanisms we have. We have an activist group that wants to work with us and that we can hear and amplify messaging from. We have folks who are not necessarily in an activist space, but know that bad bills are still bad bills and are willing to either privately or publicly advocate as long as we have those relationships and can ask for that to happen. At the level of the state house, that is both a behind the scenes and in front of the scenes coordinated effort, right? So this year, some of the bills that came through, I led several efforts to make sure that all of us had the same information and we're on the same page. Because the more common talking points we have, the more amplification of what is happening and how we can stop it helps us prevent things from coming through. As far as advancing good bills, there is some different strategy there. Certainly, we have the same networks that we can hear from and make sure get amplified, but also there is a space there where absolutely checking our pride at the door and seeing if we can get someone across the aisle to pick it up and run with the ball sometimes the good bills aren't so controversial. It's just they have to be presented as someone else's idea, right? So I am all about, here's a good idea. Do you want to take it? If that will get something that actually helps our community here, it doesn't need our names on it. It just needs to get done.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the second part of this is, what are two bills you are most proud to have sponsored that passed in the state legislature and why? If you would start, please, Representative Mitchell.
I don't have a list of bills that I have co-signed on. None of the things that I have specifically sponsored as a lead have gotten through. I think one of the things that has a lot of impact of my voice in it that did get through, and I voted against it, but I made a heck of a lot of changes, was a bill looking at public health regulations. So specifically, this one was looking at how we allow sales of unpasteurized milk in Georgia. And it sounds strange, but that bill has actually come up multiple times over multiple years. And the bill that got through this year had a lot more safety checks in it because of the work that I did on it. And that was a great illustration of how to work both across the aisle from folks who aren't naturally trusting of you, because I just had to keep coming back and be like, well, this expert says, and like, you can talk to them, and this is a good idea. And so that was a really great example of influence on a bill that my name is not on. The bills that I myself have sponsored are ones that I'm looking forward to resubmitting. One specifically, House Bill 518, is looking at how the strategic waivers are having an impact on Georgia schools. So looking at class sizes and looking at teacher regulations. So all things that influence how successful our schools are, but that now have much less state control because of the strategic waiver and charter system. So they're not through, but they're really important. And that's a bill that I'll definitely be revisiting next year.
Thank you. Okay, Representative Hutchinson, if you could let us know, what are two bills you are most proud to have sponsored that passed in the state legislature and why?
Thank you. I actually had three bills that passed that I'm really proud of. There are two bills that I introduced last session. One was mental health parity, that was part of the Speaker's big mental health bill, House Bill 1013. I introduced the mental health parity last year. I also introduced a bill that would update our mental health manual. In Georgia Code, we talk about our mental health manual that we refer to is from the 80s. And from the 80s, that particular manual, we're still diagnosing children as mentally retarded. And we have not updated that in the Georgia Code. So I introduced that one and mental health parity last year. The Speaker included both of those bills in the omnibus mental health bill, House Bill 1013. There was some opposition from strange sides when it got to the Senate. So, and that is a really nice way of putting it. But they did take out the part about the mental health manual, updating it, because some people thought it would give Democrats the opportunity to molest babies. So they took that out, but mental health parity did pass. So even though my name was not on it, you can look the year before and see that I introduced it first. So I will take credit for that. Also, I was a co-signer for raises for legislators. And some people are like, oh, that might be self-serving. Legislators have not had a raise since the 90s. So we make $17,000 a year. And last year they lowered it, so it was $15,000. And the only people who can do this job for that kind of money are people who are independently wealthy or have a very, very flexible schedule. And that's a lot to do. They say we're part-time legislators, but I work this job 365 days a year. And I see a lot of my colleagues struggling trying to make it on that salary. So I'm doing it. I can give my whole salary to charity. It does not matter to me. But if we want to build a bench, we have to have something that people want to do, and they cannot sacrifice their families for $17,000 a year, and that and raising the our retirement. So that was really important to me because we need more diversity, and I think that if we raise the salaries and retirement, we can do that. So those are 3 bills that I worked on that got at least really far.
Thank you for that. And at this time, Edward, we have a question from our audience.
Yes, Dwayne Jackson's. Well, I'm gonna read both questions because both questions kind of short. The first one is it's from the same person, Dwayne Jackson. How long have both of you been in office? And then the second question is, did either of you attempt to fight the redistricting? So, Representative Hutchinson, you can go first.
Thank you, Dwayne. I was elected in 2018. I flipped that seat that year. So this will be 4 years. Did I fight redistricting with every ounce of my soul? And I have to say, everyone did. There was not a legislator there that did not fight redistricting. And I will say that I'm very proud of our caucus for fighting as hard as we did. And we fought. We did education, we did town halls, we did everything. I think we did everything possible. The numbers are just against us. The numbers are against us. We would have won if the numbers were different. If we had flipped the House in 2020, we would have been way more successful. But the fact is, we don't have control of any level of government in Georgia. It is all Democrat run. It's a trifecta. So we can fight all we want. They have the numbers and they took advantage of that. But I am proud of everyone in our caucus for fighting as much as they did. And we put up a good fight. We did as much as we could, considering we don't have the numbers to really move the needle when it comes to redistricting. But our caucus did. We came up with our own maps. We introduced those. The rules just did not apply this session. They did not apply rules that have been in place for decades. And when the playing field is not level and they change the rules as you go, it's really difficult. But we all fought every step of the way. And things would be a whole lot different if we didn't fight. So the answer is 4 years, and yes, indeed.
Representative Mitchell.
Yes, so I will be 2 years in January. Yes, I mean, obviously nobody looked at this and said, yes, this is the best solution. So we all pushed back against this map, but there were so many redistricting fights that we had that I think we need to remind folks of. So the impact of changing our congressional district, the impact of changing our school board, the impact of changing our county commission district. You saw Gwinnett go to the mat on this. I mean, we really, we went through such a thorough process with our local redistricting. We heard thousands of lines of feedback on our school board maps, and I mean thousands. I went through them and categorized them all and got some translated, and like it was an immense amount of effort to hear what this community wanted, and then to see folks disregard what our community was asking for. So we all did everything we possibly could to try to not see the impacts that have hit Gwinnett through Republicans choosing to gerrymander rather than choosing to listen to what the actual voters here want. And I think we saw the redistricting fight actually played out in a unique way in Gwinnett, right? Because not only did we have the maps drawn, but we had an attempt at the same time to move our school board from partisan elections in November to elections in May. And that was part of the package, because as we move our elections from November to May, the folks who are actually voting look different, especially with a Kemp-Purdue primary. The attempt was to skew the results of that election. And I think we all saw that, and there was a massive coordinated effort to make sure that we all got talking points out. We all made sure that folks who could advocate could come speak against this type of thing happening. So yes, absolutely. I think we gave this our all every time it came up, because it is so important when things like this happen that we don't let a few Republicans make decisions that should really be about what is best for our communities.
All right, thank you. I don't see any more questions. Just some comments. People saying it's good to have people with a science background in the legislature. I'm gonna move on to the next question. Would either of you support a bill that would raise? I know Representative Hutchinson brought up, raising the pay of state legislatures that work in the House and the Senate, but we're also focused on the community as a whole. So would either of you support raising the state minimum wage to $15 per hour? I think it currently is it $5.15? I think last time I looked at it was $5.15. Good Lord. Jeez. I mean, I was working at 5:15 20 years ago, so good Lord. Representative Hutchinson, you could take that question. Why not would you support that bill, a bill like that?
Not only would I support it, of the 60 or 70 employees I have, there's no one at my agency that makes less than $15 an hour. No one. And I think $15 an hour is probably going to be too low, because if you made $15 an hour as a single parent, you can't raise a family with that. I pay people what they're worth, but that's just me as one business owner. But as a legislator, I would absolutely push for more, because the more we raise the minimum wage, the more you'll see rent and everything else go up. So we have to have jobs that are worth paying more than $15 an hour. $15 an hour should be McDonald's. If you're working as a CNA, or if you're working at any job where that isn't like a teenager's job, you should be making more because you're raising a family, most likely. So I think $15 is a minimum. And not only would I support it, I would structure a bill and introduce it personally.
All right, Representative Mitchell.
Yes, so I mean, this is a great question, and I would hope that every Democrat who answers this says yes. We absolutely know that we need our minimum wage to be increased here in Georgia. One additional thing I'll point out is we often have these discussions like targeting a point number, saying 15, and that'll see an important change. And while it's true that 15 minimum is important, inflation continues, whether or not we have to turn around then and fight to increase that minimum wage yet another time. So the longer these gaps are, the bigger that jump has to be, and the harder the jump is to accomplish politically. So we really, when we think about this, need to be thinking about indexing minimum wages to something so that we have a system that moves forward more progressively. And you can see the impact of not indexing wages, whether it be a minimum or it be a state salary, by looking at what happened this year with our state wages. So we saw all of our state employees get a $5,000 wage increase, and that was for all full-time benefits eligible staff. One of the reasons they did that is because our turnover for our state staff is so substantial, because the last time that all of the staff got a raise was 14 years ago. A lot has changed in 14 years. So 15 should be a target. We should be able to reach it, but we can't have this conversation and stop there, because the problem will continue as we catch up to that 15. And this year is a year where I think folks are genuinely concerned. What is the impact of inflation this year when I go to the grocery store, when I like if we're looking at purchasing a house, right? So there is a lot of space here to have a more nuanced conversation than simply just the $15 wage.
Thank you both for that. At this time, let's take a breath as we switch gears and move into that education realm. Um, we know right now in Gwinnett County that families are suffering. We talk about the minimum wage, we talk about housing. We can talk about housing, we can talk about people not having enough to eat right now. And on top of that, we talk about our education system in Gwinnett. Much of the taxpayers' monies now is being discussed about those strategic waivers. We're going to start off easy. And we want to know, as our state representative, what is your, I'm going to ask two parts. And I first want to ask, what is your stand on strategic waivers for taxpayers' monies to be given to people to use in private education? This is huge with the teachers and the school system. So I'm going to ask both of you that, and then I'm going to ask the second part of this question. We thank you. We've been rolling along so fine right now. Give you a chance to catch your breath, take a sip, just relax a minute. But again, right now, um, families, especially African American families, whose schools and whose neighborhoods are not getting equitably um, financed in their schools, where it is a zip code that determines who gets materials, resources, the ability to have, rather than across the board. So at this time, Representative Mitchell, please, what is your stance on the strategic waivers for children to be educated in Gwinnett County um, and throughout the state? If you would, go ahead.
There, just to clarify at the front end, strategic waiver is the type of school system that we have, right? So the strategic
Correct.
waiver school system, and that one is particularly referring to just sections of Title 20 that you can opt into or opt in out of as the whole district. But I think the question is actually about the voucher,
Right, the vouchers. Yeah, to me, they're the same, but thank you for the clarification. That's why you're here today. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have learned a lot more about the details of vouchers than I had hoped we needed to know this year. But we did successfully not pass more vouchers, except the one that had been originally proposed last year. So there was, you did see the State House stand up against the anti-public education crowd. So I do think we need to hear people when they say they're not being served by their local school district, right? We know that folks see inequity in distribution of resources.
So just a minute. So you are against school vouchers?
I am. I do not support vouchers. I do think folks want to be heard, and we can't pretend that this system is perfect. What we want to see is the money that does get invested from our state go to schools in a more equitable fashion. I don't think removing money from our public education system is going to make it serve anyone better. And the vast majority of these privatization vouchers are actually going to increase inequity in the folks who are enrolled still in the school system, because folks are protected in a different way in our public school systems than they are in the private school systems. And that protection and additional investment for students who need it costs money. It will not be that every student that comes into the school system takes the same amount of money to educate. We even know that in the base formulas, there are differences. So it's really important that we understand, looking at these voucher programs, people make them sound like, oh, you put X amount of money in, you should get X amount of money in out. It's not a consumer system, right? It is really a public good, and we're trying to help everyone's children get to the same places. So removing that money through this voucher system doesn't help us get where we need to go. Things that do help us get to where we need to go are things like having school boards that understand that their policies need to be equitable. Having budget structures that say, hey, we understand there is one formula, but that formula is not specifically serving kids in different districts, and we need to have a discussion about changing that formula, doing things like increasing funding specifically in places where we know we have more children living in poverty, which was a bill that was proposed this year and was not passed through, but could have made a noticeable difference. So there is a discussion to be had about how we are moving public money in public education, but I believe that is really remaining in public education rather than pulling it out.
Okay, thank you for that. Representative Hutchinson, if you first give us your position on the vouchers for students in the state of Georgia. Are you for or against vouchers?
I am against vouchers. And to me, the voucher system is, whether you're for or against, for me, is very simple. If you are funding a voucher, that means you are taking money from the public education system. And until the public education serves everyone equitably, I will never be for a voucher that takes away from a public school system. Because there's so, and you're right, it depends on your zip code. And if you are in the wrong zip code, then your child doesn't make it as far as if your zip code was Alpharetta or Swanee or things of that nature. So we are a long way from having a perfect school system. And until that happens, I will not be for anybody taking any money from a public school system. My kids were educated in a public school system. It's the best thing I ever did. I'll say that I am Catholic, and me and my husband both all went to Catholic schools because that's what we did at that time in the cities we lived in. I started my kids in Catholic school. That was the biggest mistake I ever made. I have had a real just appreciation for public school ever since. And it is, I'm passionate about it. And until if every kid has the same experiences our kids had here in Gwinnett, I will not be for a voucher system.
Thank you. And the next part of this question is what we initially talked about, was the strategic waiver. Gwinnett County is one of the few school systems in the state that is part of this system. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about this strategic waiver here in Gwinnett County, which all of this legislation had to go through the state. What is your position on this strategic waiver in Gwinnett County? Representative Hutchinson?
It's the same as the voucher. I'm not going to focus on anything that is going to take away from our public school system in a waiver or a voucher or anything of that nature until we have equity across the board. So that will be my standard response until something seriously changes in our public school system.
Okay, and Representative Mitchell, please expound on this, about the strategic waiver system in Gwinnett County.
Sure.
What is your stance on it?
So I think it's important to frame the strategic waiver conversation with an understanding of what school systems look like in Georgia. So we have three buckets that school systems can fall under. They can be Title 20 schools, which means they are regulated by all of our state education law. They can be strategic waiver schools, which means they can opt to waive specific parts of the law one by one, or they can be charter schools, which have a blanket kind of waiver of a large number of our state education law. There are two schools that follow every state education rule in Georgia, two school systems. One is Beaufort City, and the other is not in Metro Atlanta. The vast majority of schools are either strategic waiver or charter. This system actually was brought about in 2008 originally as the IE2 program that was initially designed because we knew in a balanced budget state when they made a massive budget cut to education that it couldn't actually do what it was supposed to do at that point. It was rebranded in 2015 as strategic waivers and charters, and then was pitched as flexibility. So when we look at the impact of strategic waiver and charter systems existing, we have to understand the history there, and we have to understand where we are going with it. So this system really hasn't been here that long, and we've seen some kind of mission creep, if you will, from the idea of moving from, in 2015, the idea that flexibility gave you more options, to in 2022 seeing classrooms that have 38, 36, 38, 40 kids in them. So because we have completely waived class size requirements. So I'm not anti-flexibility in a system, but I want that flexibility to be transparent and meaningful. Do we actually gain something from 40 high schoolers learning social studies in a trailer? Or would it be better to say, hey, we are going to invest more money because splitting that class in two is going to mean all of those kids learn better, and our teacher can teach better, and we can actually provide more informed citizens out the other end of this. So it's a super complex space, but some of these waivers specifically do not serve us well, and that class size waiver is certainly one of them, where we just cannot watch our class sizes continue to increase and expect education to look the same.
Okay, thank you. My children were in the system when IE squared is what all of us advocates out there called it, and it was so detrimental to Gwinnett County, as each of the school administrations were like fiefdoms making up their own rules and regulations. So definitely we stand adamantly against school waivers and look for a consistent school system across the state that's serving everyone. I have one last question about schools before we open up the chat again for questions. At this time, Representative Hutchinson, if you could start for us. And it says 18 out of the last 20 years, the state of Georgia has underfunded education. Would you support a bill to increase funding in public education? And if you would start, Representative Hutchinson.
Absolutely. And I don't think anyone needs to be convinced that that's a good idea. And I think we saw in this session specifically, our education system was attacked on every front. Budget, censorship, just really attacking our teachers. We are asking them to do so much in a short period of time for not a ton of money. The amount of stress a teacher is under in general is amazing. I so admire teachers, because I know I couldn't homeschool my kids, because that is it's such a huge job. It is a huge job. And during the school system, most kids spend more time with their teachers than they do with their parents. So that is a job that I just have to take my hat off to. They need more money. The teacher's worth, if you consider how much influence they have on our kids and not only what they learn, but what they model, is millions. I mean, they're worth millions. It's actually, a teacher is priceless, particularly a good one. A good one can make such a huge difference in a kid's life. The bad ones can too. Fortunately, my kids had good ones. Not everyone can be ranked number one, but I'm telling you, I've been so impressed by the Gwinnett County teachers. I really have. And they are worth so infinitely more than what they're getting paid. So we need more funding in classroom material. We need more funding for technology. We need more funding for the arts in school. We need sport. We have so many extracurriculars that are not funded anymore, that they need salaries. They need more funding for all the extras that our kids need to propel their futures, for them to reach their goals, and for us as a country to rise from where we are in the education system, and we're not at the top. We're closer to the bottom than most people want to acknowledge. And until we get there, we have to get the money. The problem is, Rivian makes money, Georgia Power makes money, education doesn't. So the problem is we have to change people's mindsets into not giving away money, but making an investment in the future. And that's something that I think we're missing at the Capitol right now.
Thank you. And Representative Mitchell, if you would expound on that question, please. 18 out of the last 20 years, the state of Georgia has underfunded education. Would you support a bill to increase funding in public education?
So yes, absolutely. I would support changing how we are budgeting so that we are investing more in public education. I would also note two important factors. So when we look at revenue generation, we are a balanced budget state. So we have to understand that when we say we want to put more money into public schools, we are saying we want to take some of that balanced budget and put more of it into public schools. So this is one of the reasons why I really resist efforts like the flat tax that went through this year, because that is going to reduce the amount of revenue being generated that can be used for public schools. We also need to talk about how we are spending that money in public schools. So right now, we know that counties are responsible for the vast majority of transportation funding, and that the state has actually not substantially increased that transportation funding enough to keep up with local needs. So the impact of that is quite disparate depending on which district you're in. We also need to talk about things like opportunity weighting, which is the idea that, again, coming back to House Bill 10, we need to put more money into districts where students have higher needs. Right now, our formula does not necessarily account outside of what classroom and what individual programs a child has been designated for, whether that's IEP or whether that's gifted programs or what age they are. But there are additional factors that can be put into our formula to make sure we are providing more funding to schools that inherently need more funding. So absolutely, we should be looking at how we keep funding in our public schools. Another important point here is, although the question was, should we put more investment into public schools? Part of the lead-in was 18 of 20 years, we haven't even fully invested. I need 1 minute, baby girl. We haven't even fully invested in the commitment we've already made. Both of those parts are important, and both of those parts need to be emphasized every single year, right? We should never be underfunding, and we should be asking where we need additional investment.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Edward, you have questions in the chat? Okay.
Yes, we currently have Valerie Curry. Says, for each candidate, what are the top ways for local parents to make their voices heard on education issues like voucher programs, legislated class size caps, and those waivers, legislating teachers' free speech in classrooms?
Let's start with Representative Hutchinson, please.
Thank you. I saw that question in the chat, and what I want people to understand is that those issues, making voices heard on education issues like vouchers, legislated cap size, things like that, that is something you would advocate for at the Capitol. So you have two groups that advocate for education that are most prominent at the Capitol. That is GACE and GAE. The problem with them, the problem is, just like we talked about education earlier, is not necessarily a moneymaker. They're lobbyists, which these two groups do. They do all the lobbying for education. They're not as well paid as, say, in Georgia, the highest paid lobbyists are for pet stores. Pet stores. So there are pet stores that buy pets from puppy mills, and there's a huge markup at the pet store. Those are the lobbyists that makes the most amount of money, not education, not mental health. Those don't make money, so their lobbyists are not as well paid. And that does make a difference, as much as we hate to admit it. That makes a difference at the Capitol. So usually for education, we need bodies at the Capitol. We need voices at the Capitol. These are not issues that you advocate for at school board meetings, because if you do, you are advocating to people who agree with you. It has to be done at the Capitol, and it has to be done with legislators and with an advocate and with an administration that listens to you. So I would encourage parents to do that. I would do some kind of education with parents and maybe the parent associations at the schools to let them know that this is where your voice is needed. If these are the issues that you want to advocate for, it would have to be at the Capitol, and it would have to be preferably with other legislators, or other lobbyists who agree with you. I'm assuming that's an alarm that tells me to hush.
All right. Thank you for that, Representative Hutchinson. Representative Mitchell, I'll put the question back up.
Thank you. All right. Top ways for local parents. So this is a question that local parents unfortunately got to figure out this year on a lot of these topics, because we did have to have advocacy this year against disinvestment, against limiting what teachers can actually say in the classroom. And one of the things we found this year is meeting schedules at the Capitol are intentionally chaotic, and they will be intentionally scheduled at times where it is difficult for folks to come when folks know that advocacy is coming. Another thing we saw this year was the power of student voices. It was amazing the amount of advocacy this year that actually came from students themselves. They were both at the Capitol, at the press conferences, in the meeting rooms, but also active outside of the Capitol itself. One of the things I think we didn't have time a lot for this year, because some of these bills were quite a surprise, is that the vast majority of advocacy to prevent something from happening or to advocate for something to happen is before session. Writing legislators, working together with a group of advocates, actually reaching out one by one to folks on committees and sitting down with them. This is our district. This is why this is important to us. This is what is happening to children in our district. This is why we want to see this change. And this happens one by one, office by office, by parents, by advocates, by students. And it happens somewhat continuously, so that folks don't forget in the time between session ends and that session starts again that this was a bad idea last time and it's still a bad idea. Or that, every year I hear from parents who say, why are there 36 kids in my child's class? This isn't an optimal learning environment for them. I would like you to consider this bill. And this is another situation where we sometimes actually make a meaningful change. So you'll see a lot of folks saying we need opportunity weights. We need opportunity weights. You'll see that it's coming from advocacy groups. You'll see the bill advanced on the Democratic side. You'll hear folks actually give it a hearing. The fact that the bill gets a hearing means that folks are doing the work behind the scenes. And this is the type of stuff that we see parents and community members really active in to make a change.
Thank you so much for that. We know that many of these meetings are intentionally held so that people, the community, the teachers cannot be present. So we do understand this. We'll take another question from what is it? Nikita Hemingway. The average farmer. We're going to change gears here, talking about the Georgia farmers. You guys ready? Okay, let's change gears. Is that all of the education questions that we have out there, Edward? Because we want to make sure that.
Yeah, that's the last one.
Okay. All right. So Lena's really good today. We hear her loud and clear. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. And I'm just checking mine. All right. So let's move on to the farmers. You ready for the farmers? Okay. The average farmer is 58 years old. In 10 years, 2/3 of Georgia's farmers will be retiring. Do you support legislation that would require Georgia public schools to incorporate ag ed in grades K through 12? Now,
And I'm
I
assuming
remember.
ag ed means agriculture.
Yes, agricultural education in grades K through 12. I remember because I graduated from a high school in South Carolina that had Future Farmers of America. I specifically remember that. So please, let's start with Representative Mitchell. I think we ended with you. We'll go back to you. And let me get this reset. If you would start.
Sure. So we did actually pass a bill this year encouraging agricultural education in Georgia schools. And I believe Representative Dickey, the chair of the Ag Committee, led that bill. So that's one that's worth checking out. I think it is important to make sure if we are asking Georgia public schools to add another course to their educational slate, that we do that thoughtfully and we do that in a fully funded manner. I know we just added computer science as a requirement and we several years ago, and we added financial literacy as a requirement this year as well. It is worth taking a step back and understanding how that would fit into an integrated curriculum at this point. I will note that right now we do see quite a bit of agricultural education, and we even, Brookwood just introduced, I believe, FFA. So there are ways to do it without it being a mandate. And if we feel that it is a mandate, the best way to do that would be a funded option, so that we know that schools aren't scrambling to have to fulfill a new requirement without the support for it.
Okay, thank you. Representative Hutchinson?
Yes, I agree. We have we need more opportunities for trade in high schools, in the public school system. And I'm not sure if anyone is familiar, but Georgia Power has a relationship with public schools where they provide teachers in the public school system to steer kids to trades that would help Georgia Power. Like Georgia Power is having the same type of workforce shortage that we are, and they spend a lot of money training people to lay lines or hang lines and bring power to everyone. They train them. They make 6 figures with overtime, but when they're done with their training, usually they're lured away by other states that will pay 3 times as much. So I think, if we are starting with 6 figures with overtime, I think California offers their starting pay is $300,000. So we lose we lose workers to other states. And it's almost the same thing with farming. I don't believe there is the FFA that's really active in rural areas, and they come to the capital. It's just not offered in the scope that we probably needed to. But I would love to see ag. I would love to see welding, working with your hands, veterinary side. We have to think outside of the box when it comes to education, because not every kid fits in the pre-college, college prep type of path. And I would love to see a more diverse paths offered to kids. and ag is one of them. And Representative Mitchell is right. Representative Dickey did do that bill, and Representative Dickey also he's the largest farmer of peaches in Georgia. He's the owner of Dickey Farms in South Georgia, and he is the ag guy. And I would love to see. I would just love to see a bigger array of paths offered to kids, and I think ag is one of them. I will say that in Gwinnett County, I don't see a ton of kids choosing that path, but statewide, I think we would.
Okay, thank you. Speaking about bills that appeal to our communities, our children, there were so many restrictive bills that was passed this session. And part of that was this anti-CRT conversation, as well as the conversation on restricting our rights through SB 202. What did you specifically, as an elected official, because both of you are incumbents, what did you specifically do to inform your community about these restrictive bills, and so that we can go and see some of that information? Let's start with you, Representative Hutchinson. Again, anti-CRT to SB 202. What platform did you have to inform your constituency?
Well, SB 202 passed in the previous sessions, but we did town halls. We put out as much media as possible. We met with different civic groups to inform, and the biggest way to inform the public is to fight along with Fair Fight. Stacey Abrams does an amazing job of fundraising, and her team is top notch. And the best thing we can do is not reinvent the wheel and to join with Stacey and her group. I have a fantastic relationship with them, and anytime I felt like my community needed education, I went through Fair Fight and made sure that mailers and information were sent out, because they have their finger on the pulse of everything voting related, including redistricting with Fair Count and the census. They are the best people to have any education around voting or redistricting, and that's what I did. I worked with them very, very closely.
Okay. And Representative Mitchell, how was, again, with all the negative legislation that was pushed through, and we do know that SB 202 was signed into law last year. However, it was going to be affecting the mayoral jurisdictional races, but now this year, our statewide races. What have you done to let your constituency know about these laws, and how did you reach out to them?
Sure. That is an important part of the job we're doing, is actually getting the information out about what has changed and how that impact hits folks who are here locally. So some of the things I have specifically done is I am extremely active in trying to get information out on social media, on all the platforms that we have, because we actually do have a substantial amplification locally. When we put something out that folks see and they share it, we get more information out to folks. So I have been trying to post things that are from sources that are helpful on social media continuously as I receive them. I think we also send newsletters that give folks updates. And some of the things like 202, the important impacts it has are real life. So doing things like letting folks know when you apply for an absentee ballot now, that process is different. here's a walkthrough of me trying to apply for an absentee ballot. Here's the contact information for folks when you do hit something. I have spent time actually looking at people's registration at their door when they said, hey, am I in a district? And you're like, well, here's how you look that up. And then showing them that, and then having someone's the ID not show up. So being like, here is the Gwinnett County Board of Elections number. Why don't you call it and see? So making sure that folks not only hear the big picture of what's happening and the impact that folks are trying to have with these restrictive voter laws, but also translating that to what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my community? How do I need to change how I am helping folks get that information? That's a question you hear quite a lot from folks. So really trying to use every media possible. And I think the point is good that we need to be very aware when we are saying something that we are speaking truth and using informed sources. So fair fight talking points are great because you know that they understand the space exactly. And then making sure that not only do we hear those, but that we translate them to our local community. But I want to specifically on the education bills, because that was a totally different fight that we had. And I think we have not yet seen what impact that is having. And sorry, I didn't turn my timer on, so I actually don't know how much more time I have. But we have not yet seen that impact locally, and we are about to. So we need to make really sure when folks start seeing things like, and it's not just the 11084, but when we're seeing books being challenged, when we're seeing challenges at our own schools, that we are being a connection to make sure that their voices are amplified, because we need to push back against this, and we need to still have this network that we have been putting information out into to be also receptive, so that as we change things, we have folks who are local who are advocating against the impact. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
Okay, thank you for that. And what we want to do at this time is to mention, please, 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 what both Representative Hutchinson and Representative Mitchell were talking about are the changes. So please, everyone, whether you've been registered for 1 month or 10 years, please go to mvp.sos.ga.gov. That's mvp.sos.ga.gov. Because of the 2020 census, our districts have been redrawn. Our polling locations may have been changed. We may have different representations. As a matter of fact, again, why we are focusing on this particular candidate and district is because now they are combined. So there have been a couple that have been combined. But again, please, please, we want to make sure that you have not been removed from the rolls, because some people have. So check your voting status, check your polling location, check your candidates or the people who will currently be serving you. And again, that is mvp.sos.ga.gov. Again, mvp.sos.ga.gov. Okay, thank you both for those answers. All of us collectively have to work together to get these messages out. Your Gwinnett NAACP is working tirelessly on bringing these messages to you. I just want to take a break and give them one last breath as we wind down and get to specific questions. I want to, at this time before the end, and so that we do not forget, I want to recognize people who are bringing this to you. Our PAC chair, Edward Paul, he has been leading a charge on getting this information to you. Our assistant with him on bringing these is Naimit Henry. She has been sitting down and also getting busy working for you. Of course, our unit secretary, Adrian Johnson, has been leading this way, contacting you out there, getting this information out, putting these programs together. We want to mention them specifically because they're volunteers. Your Gwinnett NAACP is made of volunteers. We invite all of you to come and help us work and to help educate and inform our community. There's our 10 or 20, 30-second commercial. So here we go again. Are you ladies ready? Because we're getting ready to wrap this up. Just ask personal questions now, what you think about certain legislation in our community. So if you would please, the next question that we would ask you, even though this is voted on at our local level, there has been state legislation that has been tied into it regarding the decriminalization of marijuana, and then being able to get licenses to distribute or grow marijuana in the state of Georgia. And this is, let's go again. Let me get this timer ready. And the timer ready. And let's get your perspective on something that is near and dear to us locally, as well as the legislation coming through the state house. Would you, at the state level, if that legislation came through, as well as dealing with the licensing, they only gave 6 licenses out, and that was tabled, and that bill is coming back again. Can you give us your perspective on this, Representative Mitchell?
Sure. I mean, what happened this year, I think my perspective is hot mess. But this problem was known. So what has happened, right, is that there were specific medical marijuana licenses granted, but then there were big lawsuits that meant that they didn't actually get to produce the products that folks need. So this year there were attempts to correct that, but there was much disagreement among the Republican caucus that resulted in nothing successfully coming out the end that could actually serve the need of folks who actually need that access to medical marijuana. I think there is a bigger question here, right? What does, and do you want me to touch on bigger than medical marijuana, correct?
Yes.
So, I mean,
well, just answer the question
reform.
Just answer the question to the best of your knowledge and how you feel about the topic.
So there are 16 states that have not passed adult use or medical marijuana, and 19 states in the US actually allow personal growth right now. So when we're talking about possibilities in Georgia, we need to frame our possibilities in what is actually going on in the US right now. It is possible, because there are many states with a framework already, to set up both personal use with regulation and to set up both medical and commercial marijuana. So we need to have that conversation, and it's a complicated one, right? And we need all the parts to happen together, because there is an agricultural component, there is a criminal justice component, there is a business component, and we can't pass half of this because it gets us back in the same mess. So this needs to be like 1013, where everyone comes to the table and says, this is the part I'm contributing, this is what it looks like, these are the advocates from the community who will be impacted by this change, and X, Y, and Z are what needs to happen here. It's a big ask, but it's a necessary ask, and we are in that moment. And as a state, we are going to be left behind if we do not have these type of conversations and figure out what this pathway forward actually looks like.
Okay, thank you for that. And that second part, even though, again, our county, and this is still for Representative Mitchell, even though it's a county decision, give us your stance. Because when you're making these decisions in the State House, what is your stance on the criminalization of marijuana?
I mean, marijuana should be decriminalized, full stop,
Okay.
right?
Thank you, because we want to make sure that people are know your stance, your position, because this is part of making those decisions. And another reason why a lot of these decisions have been held up because of individuals' personal positions on this.
That's very true. And if you have those individual conversations with legislators, it's very clear that that is actually what is happening there.
Yes, thank you for that. Okay, Representative Hutchinson, if you could please give us your input and intake on what's happening at the state level with these licensing, with who is being able to get a license, who's being able to help with growing hemp to establish this in our state. If you would go ahead.
Thank you. And not only should it be decriminalized, it should be legal. And as far as the licenses go, what happened, the hot mess was we spent all this time legalizing a very small part of medical marijuana for kids. And when the licenses were handed out, it was unfair. I mean, it's oversimplifying it, but we fought as a caucus for minority participation. And when it came out, they made women minorities. So what that meant was Caucasian men who own businesses put their wives, daughters, any woman they can find as the head of their company, and that made them a minority business. So we did not get the minority participation that we wanted to. And everyone who applied, not everyone, but a vast majority of people who applied and did not get it is suing the state, and that's what's holding up everything. I suggest, however, that it's already, for the most part, legal in Georgia, and I'll tell you why. You can go to any smoke shop, you can go to most gas stations and buy Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10 is illegal, but I have seen it there. I brought this issue in Gwinnett County because we do have in my district a Chevron station that sells all of this down the street from Brookwood High School, down the street from Five Forks Middle, and the kids are calling it the weed shop. I went in, I purchased this. I was diagnosed as an insomniac in my 20s. Those edibles are extremely strong. I take them before I go to sleep, and not every day, but I've taken them and they give you some really great sleep. I brought those products to our solicitor and to our DA. They looked over it, they analyzed it, they did controlled buys to look at these products, and our DA put a ban on it until they can study it more. The smoke shops who are selling these products that are very, very strong, very strong. We're talking about buds, pre-rolls, edibles, vapes. These all contain these products that are super strong. I don't have a problem with it. I use it myself. However, I did have a problem with it being 2 blocks away from Brookwood High School and 2 blocks away from Five Forks Middle. That the courts reversed our DA's order. So they are protecting what we're selling now. And I challenge anyone to go to any one of these shops and test some of the products and see if you think that is any different than anything you would get on the street or even prescribed to you at a pharmacy. The problem is there's no regulation of these particular products because they're not technically marijuana. And since they're not technically marijuana and nobody really can tell the difference by sight or by taking it, ingesting it, and having the outcomes of it, there's no difference to me between the two. So if this is legal, if these products are legal, marijuana is legal because there's really no discernible difference between the two. So I would say that we're halfway to it being there. We just have to I think at this point, the argument is silly. And I think we're going to move towards regulation, hopefully, and hopefully not as close to schools.
Okay. We've had a lot of questions today. Our topics have ranged across the board. This small stage is not enough for any campaign. We hope that we've opened up a door. We hope that we've ignited conversation. We hope that there are other questions that you have so that you can contact these representatives directly and get more specific information that will get you to understand their stances and their positions. Right now, we want to make sure that this event was one that was helpful and giving you information on today. So we're going to get ready to wrap up. We want you to come with your elevator speech. We started with this. After hearing yourselves and answering these questions, we're going to end with this. Okay, your elevator speech, and let me get my timer ready. We're going to make it down to 2 minutes because you've been talking about yourselves, saying who you are. Okay, so right now, if you both would please give us your elevator speech on why you should represent this new district that was combined in Gwinnett County, and why you would do the best job. Let's start with you, Representative Mitchell.
Oh, all right. So I'll start with saying I have been doing this job for 2 years and I absolutely love doing it. I love getting constituent emails that I can actually solve problems for people. I like hearing that when something's wrong, there is a pathway to make it better. I see a longer term impact of the things we are doing. And I think we are working collectively to build a better Georgia. And I would really love to have your vote to continue to be able to do the job I'm doing the same way I'm already doing it, to make sure that our kids are growing up in the Georgia that we want them to be in. And I really appreciate your time. If you've all been here for an hour and a half hearing us speak tonight. And thank you so much to the NAACP for arranging this forum for us to be able to connect with more folks.
You are very welcome. It is a privilege to be here with you today. Representative Hutchinson?
Yes, thank you so much. I want to say the same. I have been here for 4 years and I love my constituents. I love my colleagues. I love the people that I work with. I differ with Representative Mitchell's. I hate the Capitol. It is awful. It is stressful. The people are mean. They're difficult to work with, but I'm staying in it to change that. I think that we have to right this wrong. I think we have to make the people's house the people's house. The people can't be afraid to go to their house. And I'm afraid every morning, to be honest, because I don't know what I'm walking into, because every day is a different source of evil. It is something you have to, if you're constantly watching your back, you cannot enjoy your workplace. I want to enjoy my workplace. I want my colleagues to enjoy my workplace, and I want the people to enjoy their house. And that's why I'm here to change it ongoing. This is a job I could love if things were better run. What happens at the Capitol could meet the federal definition of a hostile workplace, 100%. But we beg for this job. We pay money to be in this job. So it's hard to complain about that. What we can do is move forward and try to make things better. It wasn't always this divided. It wasn't always this hateful. And I'm here to make sure that it becomes a welcoming place, because right now at the Capitol itself, it's really just not. My constituents, I love the Capitol. I'm here ongoing to make it better.
Okay, give us your website. Tell us how to reach you. Representative Hutchinson.
I am www.shelly4FOR Georgia spelled out.com. And I would love your vote. And if you have some time to knock doors of volunteers, I'd take that too.
Okay. And Representative Mitchell, give us your contact information.
Sure. My email as a candidate is rebecca@rebeccaforgeorgia.com. And the fastest way to reach me, which people have figured out, is I'm also on Twitter and Facebook at Rebecca for Georgia, because the emails often come, thousands at a time. So I try to be really responsive on all the media, and I do have a website, Rebecca for Georgia, as well. But the most interactive option is definitely to hit one of the social media or the email.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Shelly Hutchinson. Thank you, Representative Rebecca Mitchell. It was great sitting here with you, talking with you, asking questions, informing, educating our community, our beloved community. Edward, do you have something to say before we close out?
No, I'm gonna pull them both out. Thank you, Representative Hutchinson, Representative Mitchell. It's a pleasure. Tough call. I mean, if you live in Snellville, y'all got a tough call to make in terms of who to elect. It's unfortunate that these two candidates who were in two separate districts have been combined and they have to run against each other. But I expect that to be a very competitive race. But this is why platforms like this is important. Again, we're trying to do our best to help you flesh out who's the best candidate to be on the ballot for you, not only in House District 106, but also in the other districts throughout the county. As President Poole stated, please go to www.mvp.sos.ga.gov. Learn about who's running, learn what district you're in. One thing about Georgia, I will say, compared to a lot of states, a lot of information on the Secretary of State website, where you can look up which candidates are running in your district. Once you realize what House district you're in, what state Senate district you're in, every district gets two people to represent them in both chambers. You get one state House representative, one senator. Figure out who's running in those races. Once you learn what district number you're in each chamber, and like I said, try to learn about them. Try to educate yourself about who's on the ballot. Learn about who was voting for these bad education bills and SB 202, and a lot of these bills that are coming out. So you have opportunity come general election to vote some of these people out of office if you disagree with those bills. So again, we have a chance to transform the state of Georgia, but it starts with us educating. Excuse my daughter. Starts with us educating yourselves about what's going on, and we're going to continue to do our best to educate you. We have another great platform coming on Tuesday at 7:00. Be another Meet the Candidate forum, this time for a Superior Court judge. We have be a 2-hour program starting at 7:00 on April the 12th, Tuesday night. We'll have the first set of candidates, which, if I'm not mistaken, is attorney Karen Scott Green and Judge Tim Hamill. And then we'll have incumbent Judge Tracy Kaysen and attorney Andre Johnson in the second hour. So again, please join us for that program from 7 to 9 for Superior Court judge. Again, judges are not on the ballot in November. So you only get this one shot to vote for them, which is why we need a good voter turnout. I'm gonna mute my mic so my daughter can get off. Stop being part of the program. Go ahead, President Poole.
Thank you very much, Edward, for all your input and updated information. We know that this upcoming week is a holy week for many of us, and you and your family, we look for peace and joy. And with this resurrection and Passover coming up, please, family, you're important. Family, we are here for this beloved community. Please, if you want to volunteer with us, we need people to help. Again, in these upcoming elections, we need people to knock on doors, make calls, work with membership. We are having our Juneteenth celebration coming up. We're planning for it now. So come on. Vendors will be free. Again, vendors will be free. And on the June 18th, The Ebony Society will be having Juneteenth in Lawrenceville, and on the 19th, we will be having Juneteenth in Norcross. So come on, go to our website. We need vendors to sign up. Vendors are free. We are partnering with the city of Norcross, who will be hosting the event along with us. We look forward to you coming. But again, just take advantage of this holiday weekend coming up, this consecrated week that's coming, this Holy Week. And we thank you again for you and your family showing. Again, you're Gwinnett NAACP. We thank you for your participation. Now we would like to close with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for your goodness and your mercy towards us. We thank you for your spirit that covers, Lord God, and intercedes on our behalf. Right now, Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for this day. Thank you for protecting, covering this community. Thank you for all who attended. We hope that we were a vessel for your plans for this day, for this place. Please protect all of us. Protect us. COVID is not over. So protect us to be safe and to be healthy. We hope that all that was done, said, or even thought about today was for your glory, for your honor. Again, we stand here as witnesses to uplifting and this community. It is in the matchless name of my God, Jesus, I pray. Please pray to your God. Amen. Amen. Ashe. Thank you all for coming and participating.
Man. All right. Look, thank you all for joining us. We will see you all Tuesday night at 7:00 for another Meet the Candidate Forum. That's usually our general meeting. We will suspend our general meeting to do our Meet the Candidate Forum at 7:00 Tuesday night. So we will see y'all then.